Good evening and welcome to another episode of Narc Narc. Who's there? Help me. I'm gasping for air. I love that title. I love it, love it. I love Dana. She's back. We are doing this series. Welcome. I am so excited because we are discussing, I don't even want to call him father. Like, I don't even think that's a justifiable. Anybody can lay down and get somebody pregnant, but father, I don't think that's a term that should be used here. So what do you think we should call him? And welcome, by the way.
Hey, what should we call them? I think that's a personal decision. I mean, unfortunately, for societal purposes and relational conversation, we call them dad, father, whatever. I mean,
Sperm donor.
yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I've even been with people, we all have that mother wound as well. And mother's the egg donor, this is the sperm donor, but you call them what you will. There's a lot of other names we can call them that apply.
Yes, there
But
is.
at the end of the day, I think that what I want people to get out of this is we are obviously here to connect and relate and let you know that you're not alone. But as much as it sucks, whether it's mother, father, whoever, siblings, they're usually, we talked about that already before, but there's a lot of people lost as collateral damage in this narcissistic warfare, which is basically what it feels like is warfare.
Yes.
But we have to remember that just because you are biologically related to somebody does not mean you have an obligation to continue those relationships. If they are hurting you mentally, physically, especially in any way, shape, or form toxic, they're not serving you any purpose to continue. People are not going to change. They have shown you how they feel about you. And today we're going to get into how, at least for our experiences, how fathers, for lack of better words, have not contributed to our well-being in the most positive way.
Absolutely. By the way, I have to tell you, I have to give you a little shout out. I was looking while I was recovering and from the most recent surgery, and I was watching all of these amazing little tidbits showing that your book is coming. I'm so excited. I can't wait. I was so excited. I thought I was so special when I knew titles before, but then she dropped them on the last one, and it was like, Dad gummit, because I was just feeling a little special there. So I'm just a little hurt for a moment, but I'll get over
No, no, no. You are very special because I keep those little tidbits for those special times
it.
and special people. There are people that I sprinkle information among that don't even know that they have inside info. But yes, the book about my childhood is coming out in October called Choking on Shame, the scapegoat child in a narcissistic family. And it was rough. I mean, honestly, full disclosure, I'm not even excited about it because it was gut wrenching to write it. And it's not just that I'm not over stuff or that, I mean, like I was having psychosomatic symptoms where I couldn't write for days. There were memories, even after it already went to the publisher, there were memories resurfacing in the middle of the night. And I never thought I was one of those people who hid all that trauma and like forgot about things that happened 30, 40 years ago. But that book, I never like to use the term broken or damaged because that's just not nice. But that book did kind of break me a little. It definitely showed me where I wasn't healed and took me right back into therapy. But thank God, I appreciate those moments in time where I can step back and say, okay, I need a minute. That this one alerted me. It's like those red alarms going off that like you still have work to do, girlfriend, and that inner child stuff sucks ass. I'm just gonna
It
say.
does. It absolutely does.
Yeah,
It's
but a lot of it was my mother, but a lot of it had to do, as I was saying before, is the father figure. In my case, it was the stepfather who was in my life since I was very, very young. But man, it doesn't matter. Whoever is that father figure, they're both responsible for your well-being. And I don't know about anyone else, but when you have both of them coming against you, as I know you had as well, I mean, to try to grow up in that, you're basically raising yourself. And
amen, sister.
I mean, no child, I'm talking like my stuff started at 3 years old. I was
Mhm.
on my own. And I am finding at 48 that there are a lot of things I am completely inept in
Yeah.
in relationships because I had to make my own way. And what the hell does a 3-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 23-year-old for that matter know? And I've made my way so far and I'm good and I pat myself on the back, but we can all always be better. And part of that is understanding what we've been through and accepting it. And that's why you and I are here sharing the experiences so that hopefully it opens somebody else's eyes to understand what their situation is and so that they hopefully can move forward and get to a certain peace with it.
Yeah, absolutely. My Narc cruise there is getting ready to come out this month, and I went back and looked at it, and I was like, how much of this do I really want to put in there? How much,
Yeah.
And the thing is that I put proof of everything, like everything. There's actual text messages, there's photographs of my sperm donor with other women, there's text messages to him from other women. There is so much evidence in every category we've covered so far and will cover. And you go back and you think, oh, I need to add that one in there. Or, when is enough enough? When are you pushing it a little too much? And then you go back and think, how was I so naive? How was I so different? And I wanted
Yeah.
to share with you and all of the listeners, I have been in therapy since like basically elementary school, but the wonderful woman that has helped me all of these years said to me when I spoke with her not long ago, and I told her, I was like, the black sheep really is like everything's put on us and we're blamed for everything. But in reality, they try to shut us up and ruin our self worth, ruin our self esteem because we carry the knowledge and the
We're
truth.
we're the truth seers. We see things for what they really are and we call it out. And
Right,
they can't risk that. They cannot risk being exposed.
right,
Because that's the problem with a narcissistic parent. A narcissist of any type, it's all about them. That's the typical idea about them in a simplistic way. But with the parents, this is why people don't understand us and why there's so much push against people like us when we do speak out. That's your mother, that's your father. Yeah, well, guess what? I was their child and they put themselves above me. How they appeared was more important than my well-being. And they shut you up and they silence you. They will physically use force to intimidate you. And that's not okay in any case, but specifically just because they want to save face,
and they
it's
ruin that you're
atrocious.
they ruin who you are to everybody, and
Yes,
nobody believes you,
everybody.
so that
And from the time you're a child.
that
And I
exactly
think that's the thing that people don't understand. Oh, they wouldn't do that. They're wonderful. Yeah, well, you're not their daughter, I always say. And
right.
that's the thing. I was being ruined from the time and discredited, called a
Mhm.
liar, called crazy, deemed mentally unstable from the time I was a young child. And so when I sit here, it hurts my heart to even sit here listening to you saying, and I have this evidence and I'm putting, because that's a typical thing that we do is we are so used to being that it's just assumed that nobody will believe us that we are like collecting every fact that we can and
Right,
like we want to hold a public forum to say, look, I'm telling the truth, I swear, because we just want somebody to believe us. And how sad it is that we still as adults have that doubt and that
yeah,
we have, and I know you carry this too, you're putting this book out and we're both like, you, a part of you almost feels bad because people shame you about it, but it's like, but this is my truth and it's
right,
wrong. And it's not even about them, it's more about me and my healing and my experience helping other people. But other people don't see it that way. But the problem is other people don't want to see the truth either.
right,
Just like all the people that enable and excuse and call you a liar and say, yeah, you know what, that Dana, she's crazy. Okay, well, if I'm crazy, then don't worry about what I'm writing. That's my
right.
response to that. So congratulations, by the way. I'm very excited. Because I love your cover. The cover of this book is ridiculous, people, just so you know. If you haven't seen it, you will see it soon. I imagine we will have some big reveal somewhere on social media and know when the book is available. But it's definitely about your experience being raised by narcissistic parents. And it just, your cover just really, I felt it because I was that girl knocking on that door and getting that person that looked good to the community, but boy, behind that door, that was scary stuff.
Right. But thank you. But what is so ironic is it's like you can have all the proof in the world. And then it's like, well, why do you have pictures of this? Why? And then they turn it like,
Yeah,
well, you didn't have my permission to take this. So you're being deceitful because you went behind my back and didn't have my permission. And you're like, you were the one who was wrong. Why did you turn
right.
this on me? But the one thing I wanted to put out that I thought was just jaw dropping was she said to me, if you and I are lying, then why are they trying to silence us? If we're telling a lie about who they are and it's not their truth, why do they try and silence us?
Well, because they know that we're not lying. They
Right.
know
That's
that.
why they
They
want
just
to
have to
silence
have
us.
everybody else think that we're liars. They
Right.
discredit their victims because they know at some point you're going to find some strength and get brave enough to open your mouth up to some unsuspecting person,
Right.
some person that you might still have a tie to, that might still possibly believe you, and they can't risk that. They can't risk
Right.
anyone believing you. Anybody.
Well, let's dive into the whole father thing. It's hard when you're growing up and you feel like you're not even important. It's almost as if you can imagine, if you close your eyes and you imagine a little girl who is sitting there and she has broken family pictures and a calendar with lots of like cancellations all over everything because you're promised all of these things and they're never delivered. Everyone else is more important than you unless you
Mm.
feed into whatever they need at that moment. That's when it matters. And growing up, everybody knew that, and to this day, everyone who knows me knows my grandparents were everything to me. Anyone who knows me knows that. And to punish me wasn't you're going to bed early, you lose TV, you lose this, you lose that. I lost the right to see my grandparents. That was my punishment. Or the stuffed animal my grandparents gave me the day I was born was taken from me. And I was not allowed to go and see my grandparents, nor was I allowed to call them. And that was my punishment. And that to me was awful. Take away my TV, make me go to bed early. I don't care, but you don't take away my grandparents. Like that was like not, even an option. But like he would do something. They did the perfect example, and I didn't put this in the book, but I mean, because it's so tedious, it's stupid. He would call me in the room and he'd be like, "Can you go get me some water?" And I'd go downstairs and I'd go get water. I'd come back and hand to God, he would say, "I don't like the glass. I don't like how it feels in the glass. I don't like how it tastes in that glass. I want a different glass." So I'd go get a different type of glass completely altogether. There's not enough ice. I have to go back down again. Where'd you get the water out of? The sink. No. Well, the sink had a water filter. No. So I go back, rinse out the cup, get the same amount of ice, and fill it from the refrigerator. Where'd you get the water? The refrigerator. No. I want a bottle of water. You didn't say that. So now I'm going back downstairs again. And I'm like, I remember this like 5. And I would go back downstairs, get the same cup, throw everything out, get more ice that came from the refrigerator, the same place the water would, and get him a bottle of water. And it was like a nightly thing. And it was like, why am I having to go and do this for you? I mean, it was time and time again. And it was never, I would say, could you come in and tuck me in? No. It was if you want to say goodnight to me, you come to me. You have to always go to him. If I said something and he didn't want me talking, he would like pick me up and put me on top of his armoire in his bedroom. And I was little and he would leave me there for a long time. And he would go back and do whatever he would. He would leave the room and left me way up high on this piece of furniture because I said something. I mean, this is just, and this is at a really young age and it's primitive years. And even as, I don't care what age you are, people, even as adults, people are like, well, you're an adult. Yes, I might be an adult now, but he's still the parent and he should act, like in fact, they have nothing to do with faith. That they're still the parent, they're the grandparent. They are, narcissistic grandparents, which is another episode we have to do.
Yes.
And they, I mean, literally, how do you, and we're both parents, how do you completely ignore an innocent child who has, literally been fighting for their life, and you got nothing to do with them because they don't suit you.
Yeah, there's nothing more degrading, and degrading isn't even the right word. I mean, these days, one of the things that really bothers me that's become a thing is like ghosting, not responding to somebody's communications, or what's worse, and has been done to me by many, many, many people, the I'm standing right in front of you and you pretend like I'm not even there. I was made to feel that way from a very young age as well. So I have words, my stepfather, who was essentially the father figure, the only one that I had, would degrade and demean me every chance he had. You should have never been born. Nobody loves you. Your mother didn't even want you, which unfortunately is actually the truth. That was probably the only truth he ever spoke. But to actually say that out loud to a young child, I mean, that's just unconscionable to me. And I could go on and on with a million examples, but then even as an adult, and I too thankfully had a great grandma and a grandma that loved me very much, and thankfully nurtured me in the way that I wasn't otherwise. But even now, I'm 48 years old and I'm not allowed to see my grandma because she's now, getting to that age where she's not doing so well physically or mentally. And so she lives with my mother and stepfather. And but this is a typical narcissistic thing. I'm not allowed at their house. Well, if
I'm not
somebody
either.
is not allowed at a house that gives others, including other family members and siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, the impression like, wow, what don't we know? What did Dana do? What did Victoria do? That they don't even allow her at their house. Oh my gosh. It gives an impression
Mhm.
without actually spreading the rumor or
Absolutely.
telling the lie. But you know how hard it is for me to listen on the phone with my grandma who's starting to have memory issues and such. Well, why didn't you come to my 80th birthday party? Because I wasn't invited, Grandma. Well, they told me you were invited, and they said you had to work, so you just didn't come. And she's crying. I honestly had no idea. My son took friends to this party. I didn't even know it was happening, but I wasn't invited. And this is Christmas. This is family reunions. This is multiple things. And it's really disgusting that they do this, and thereby again just perpetuating this idea that there's something wrong with me, and that I'm like, I mean, if I heard somebody wasn't allowed at a house, I'd think, what are they, a criminal? Are they a
Right.
thief? Did they do something horrible? Or are they as mentally unstable as they're accused of being? And I'm like, over here, I mean, I posted a funny thing on Facebook last month. It's like, I don't know why so many people hate me, because I'm just at home having a cheese stick with my cat. Like, I'm not doing anything. And you could probably hear her. She's at my feet here meowing. But I mean, it gets ridiculous that you can literally do nothing and they create this whole illusion
Absolutely.
and people buy it.
Yes,
They
they
just,
do.
without questioning it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely they do. When my grandmother passed away, I was young and I was 21, and I was devastated. Like my whole world was just turned upside down. And it wasn't long after that that um, my sperm donor, if you will, called me and said, I need you to come to the house. We have to go through the will. I'm the executor and I have to go through the will. You would have never known, Dana, by looking at these people, that they had the money they did. They were very, very humble, very sweet, very giving, very kind. And I sat down, and in front of me was all these legal documents. So hand to God. And I'm like, I don't care, I just want the girl back. I don't care. Like, I don't care whatever this is. I just want it back. And he was like, okay, so he starts reading this document, and it's all this legal jargon. And I'm young, I don't know what I'm looking at. And he goes, well, your grandmother left you $1 million. And when you turn 25, it will come out of the trust and you can have it. And I was like, I want my grandmother. Like, I didn't even hesitate.
Right.
And I was like, that doesn't bring her back. And he goes, so you don't want the money? And I said, I'd rather have pictures. I'd rather have memories. Like, and he was like, so you don't want it? And he goes, well, she wanted you to have it. So I'm looking at these documents. Okay, whatever. I don't even know. I'm still bawling. This was in April, mid-April. She passed in January of 97. So I'm like, okay. And I just, whatever. And I signed it and I said, you know what? I want the pictures. I want the greeting card. She kept every greeting card I ever gave them. I was like, these are the things that I want. These are the memories that I want. And he goes, well, I haven't gone through any of that yet, blah, blah, blah. So, whatever. I got up and left. I'm like, I can't even be here right now. I don't even want to be here. Sign what I have to sign. I'm leaving. So I do. And a couple months later, he's like, so what are you gonna do with the money? What are you gonna do? You're gonna buy a house, you're gonna do this. And I was like, I honestly hadn't thought about it because I had put no thought into it. I want my grandmother. Like that's where I am. And he's like, well, that's ridiculous. Now, true narcissistic people care about the perception of what people think of them. And my bio, whatever you want to call him, is all about the perception that he is from New York. He, not myself, he's Jewish, and that he has money, even though he celebrates Christmas. I'm not knocking any religion whatsoever, but he celebrates Christmas and doesn't even own a menorah. So that's all I'm gonna say on this.
Oh
So
boy.
right, but he wears the high. He wore the high on the necklace, but he told everybody he was a New York Jew, but he celebrated Christmas and didn't do. I mean, he didn't even own a yarmulke. He didn't celebrate Hanukkah. Nothing, nothing. So a couple of months later, after that, he and I were in some discussion as always. Like he's blaming me for something, whatever. And he goes, "You are such a effing idiot." And I was like, what did I do now? Like, I don't live here. What did I get blamed for this time? And he
Right.
goes, do you really believe that you're getting $1 million? And I went, what are you talking about? And he goes, that whole thing was a joke. It wasn't even real. And I went, wait,
What?
what? I was so angry, Dana, that he would use my grandmother's passing as a way to mock at me. That how do you do? First of all, that's his mother. This was like the most wonderful woman ever. And just he made up the documents. Like they were realistic documents. I signed it and he signed it and he literally and he made all this up thinking it was a big old freaking joke. And he's like, oh, there was lots of money. I just kept it all for myself. And he's like, I don't have to. And he didn't probate the will, so I could never see it. I could never get a copy of it. And I have no idea. I know that things were left to me. I didn't get it. And that's fine.
Hmm.
It's materialistic things. I want her. I get the
Fair.
memories. And
Right.
but who in the hell does something like that as a joke?
A narcissist who's trying to make it look like you are the one after the money. Oh, she signed this thing thinking she's getting $1 million. See, when you've played the narcissistic game a few times, like we have, you can see it in other people's situations. You see it coming. And that's, I swear to God, I'm sorry I was laughing when you were talking about he thinks he's a Jew from, you'll actually read that in my next book, Choking on Shame, is what I talk about my stepfather. Same thing. Married my mother in the Catholic Church that we attended, celebrates Christmas every year, yet proclaimed he was a Jew. Never, and I actually say the same thing. Never saw him wear a yarmulke, never saw a menorah lit in our house like the other Jewish kids in the neighborhood, because we grew up in a predominantly Jewish community. Ironically, it's like he wanted so bad to be
The
perceived
perception.
as being Jewish that he literally bought his home before we moved in with him. He bought his home in a predominantly Jewish community with a Holocaust museum and everything, and ran around and he still tells people he's Jewish. I'm like, I'm 48, have yet to see I mean, there is no Star of David, there is no nothing in that house and I remember being at their wedding, standing up there in the Catholic church that my
Oh
mother and I
wow.
belong to. And I relay this in my book, like watching this man stand there, crossing himself, and I like,
What?
just like, and I'm 7 years old, or maybe I was just turning 7. I was right around 7 though. And I'm like sitting there like, what the hell is this? Does he think like people are buying this? But I remember, like I say, I relay the story. I'm looking out at my godmother, my grandma, my great, all these, the women who believed me and who still are on my side. And they're just smiling and telling me to smile and respect your mother. And I'm just like, but don't, it's like I'm antsy. I can't say anything in the church in the middle of the ceremony, but I'm like, do people not see what is going on?
Right.
to not see that. I mean, you want to talk about a mask? This man's full of shit to the freaking max. Like he's
Yeah.
loaded with it, and
Yeah.
everybody's buying it. Like it's an ice cream sundae. No, not this girl, not this girl. But it never got better. Now, I'm curious though, because I know what my deficiency was, which was basically existing. And I don't mean that lightly. My mother
No,
did not want me. It's a whole story. You got to read the book. But, you know, she actually convinced her husband and many people that I was apparently a product of rape. I mean, apparently she's claiming her boyfriend in high school raped her. And yeah, the rapist, by the way, texts me every day and has been the most amazing father ever. But, and she named me after him, just saying. You know, so yeah, hard to swallow that one. But she's got people convinced, including her husband. So from day one, I was deemed as less than, which in its own right is sick.
it is.
But then he was so bent on having, I kept hearing about he wants his own child. I didn't have the right DNA. My mother would remind me that all the time, that she thought I was going to be a boy and she was going to name me this, again after my father, my real father, you know. And it's just like I complain in the book, like it's like even as a kid I thought I got it all wrong. I was born, which was the first mistake. I was born the wrong gender. She did not like who my father was and wanted it to be her husband instead of the person that she coupled with instead, and then wanted to blame him. I was always talked to about as a mistake or an accident, or my favorite, which I talk about in the book a lot, I kept hearing conversations about what he did to her. Like she would make a typical narcissist. She
Absolutely.
didn't, forgive me for being crude, she didn't spread her legs to him. He did this to her, and I'm the thing that was done to her, as if it was some horrible thing. So then my stepfather would go on these, I shouldn't have to pay for another man's child. I shouldn't have to look at you in the face every day and see his face, because of course I looked more like my dad when I was younger. And thank God. I mean, my mom was pretty, but I didn't want to look like my stepfather. That would be scary. But you know, it was just so many things. But again, I go to the fact that I tell everybody, think of a young little girl, think of a
Yeah.
5 or 6 year old little girl, and saying and
That's what
doing
I'm
the
doing right
things that
now.
happened to you and that happened to me. If you can sleep at night after doing something like that, we're all human. None of us know what to do. We deal with what life throws at us, but there is nobody can argue with me that they did the best they could, or this other crap. Or the other big thing I get is, oh, but they probably came from, yeah, you know what? My mother, abusive household. I mean, her father held a gun to her head. He was a drunk and he was a narcissist. Absolutely. There was a lot of stuff there. Stepdad, yeah, both his parents actually abandoned him and his 4 siblings, like literally abandoned them
Doesn't give them
in
the right.
Boston, and they were separated into foster homes. He was abused. That is not an excuse. I don't care what the hell you have been through, because why
Mm-mm.
is it that after everything that I went through, and then decided I didn't trust myself enough to have a child because I was afraid I would do to another human being what they did to me, but then I decided, no, I'm going to just not be that way. I don't know what the hell I was doing being a parent, but I was not going to do that. And when
Right.
I
You
had
broke
my
the cycle.
son, why is it exactly? But so I don't buy this, well, that was what was done to them, as an excuse, because I was able to raise my son without, I will admit, one time, and I cringe even admitting it, but I spanked him so hard. It was just one big whack. And then I went and cried. I wanted to die because I did that to him, because I never, and here's my tears, this is still my regret, because I never wanted to do to him what they did to me. Because it wasn't just the verbal, it was the physical. It was
Right.
being strangled and thrown downstairs. It was being literally dragged by my hair, having my head banged against the wall, picking up the phone to call 911 and being beaten with the phone. That is not okay. That
No,
is
it's not.
not okay.
No.
I'm
You're
going to take a minute and breathe. You go ahead.
you are not like that at all. You are not. You are such a beautiful
I
person
know.
inside and
Thank
out.
you.
And she's just an amazing human being. And I, every once in a while we do need to be reminded that we are not them. You know, the fact that it blows my mind that, these narcissists portray just such a stuck up egotistical ass. Because of my circumstances with my daughter being medically fragile and coding all the time, and I gave up a six-figure career. And I don't think I lost a thing. Like, people like, don't you regret doing this? No, I don't. But I knew what I was getting into, but I shielded her from as much of it as I could. And, at one point, and I actually put the contract in the book, I contemplated it, but I did. And Dana, it's ridiculous, but I know it's almost worth just for the contract. My sperm donor writes this contract, and of course I've redacted names because I'm not giving them that satisfaction. And in the contract, he writes that Faith will not call him an ass.
Oh,
And Faith will not call him Jew boy. And because he was talking to a woman at Costco one day, and I was pushing Faith in the cart, and we went over, there was Christmas stuff and everything there. And he was flirting with a woman. And Faith, who, as we all know and love, has no filter, and she yelled, "Hey, Raisin, why are you over here talking to a woman?" And she's like, "You're like Casablanca, you have no game." And he was like, "What?" And she goes, "Why are you in the Christmas section? You're Jewish, Jew boy." And so in this contract is that, and I redacted it so I don't offend anybody at all, but
right.
it's in there saying that she won't call him an ass and she won't flip him off. And I have so many pictures that I've put in the book where she's like in the crib and he's flipping her off. And all of these
Wow.
pictures where he's flipping her. And all, and the picture, she's in it and he's giving her the bird. And he's out telling everybody, she gives me the finger and she does this and she does that. And I put this in there, and he made her sign this contract. And I'm like, what bloody court is gonna hold this to fruition for like an 8-year-old to sign a damn contract, not to call you names, you big puss? Like, you are an older person, and your little feelings, wah freaking wah, are gonna get hurt because my daughter, who by the way is proficient in signs that you're an ass. And you go around flipping her off and telling her she has to lie and can't tell anybody that you're with other women. And she gets mad and tells you you're an ass because she doesn't want to lie. Mom taught her better. And so you go around and just, tell everybody, she's sick, and he's gotten so much money out of telling everybody about her. Like, he went and got a generator for their 10,000 square foot house and said it was because she's on all this equipment, and wrote it off on their taxes. So he would always have a generator. Are you freaking kidding me? He's telling everybody, "Oh, I paid for this, I paid for that." I have every receipt. I have the bank statements. I have it where it shows I paid for it. But I guess that doesn't make it real.
No, no, because everything they do has to be glorified to make them look good,
Right.
And that's the thing, it's interesting. Everything we talk about, I mean, any narcissist you deal with, it's about power and control. And if you disrespect them, boy, that's the greatest offense to their ego. So, it's funny when I'm listening to you and you're like, what man expects an 8-year-old to sign a contract? I'm like, what person of any age writes a contract for his granddaughter to sign? Like, I mean, that sounds like something my stepfather would do, because with them money, the money,
It's all
it's
money.
all about money and what people, I remember for 13 years, I ran a housekeeping business, obviously as an adult, not as a child. But I remember at one point in his luxury, community that he lives in, his next door neighbor said, "I know your daughter has a housekeeping business. Could you have her come and call me, give me a bid?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, make sure when you go over there, you tell them you have a college education." And I'm like, what does a college
What?
education have to do with the girls, the cleaning crew that I'm going to send to clean a house and scrub toilet? Like, you don't need a college education. Well,
Right,
they need to know that you don't just clean houses, that you have a college degree. And it's like, oh, this is about you, because
right,
God forbid your daughter, by the way, has a six-figure cleaning business. Thank you very much, in a podunk area in the Midwest where I don't even know how, well, because I'm successful. That's how that I made it a six-figure business. But like, isn't that how, why? And the worst case, there's so much here. The other part of it, there was another person that asked for a recommendation for a cleaning person, and he gave my number. And she called me and she said, yeah, so and so gave me your number. And she said, he told me you're his cleaning service. And I'm like, he didn't tell you I'm his daughter? And she goes, you're his daughter? No, he just said you're his cleaning service. And I'm like, wow. Wow. So, it's interesting that 2018, 2019, when they decided for the final time, my mother and stepfather, this was the third time in my life they decided to dissociate from me. Um, they still they did not want, and I am clear, I am saying this very seriously. I have text messages that I can prove. They did not want a parent-daughter relationship with me anymore, but they still wanted me to send my service they wanted me to personally clean their house every week and their business. And I was like, that's not how this works.
no,
That doesn't work that way. If that's what this is, and dumb me, I did go a couple more times in a professional capacity. Like, okay, if that's how it's going to be, that's how it's going to be. But the last time I had left there, because of the way I was treated that last time, I literally, my hands were like shaking. I was on the verge of a panic attack, and I'm like, it's not worth it there. And he's like, well, don't you need the money? I said, not that. I don't need your money. I don't need your money. And we dissociated. And then the next thing, my mother, who does not contact me, sends me a text and said, well, what's your new, because I remarried shortly after that. And they're like, she goes, what's your new last name? Because I have to change our will. And I knew she wasn't changing her will to add my new name to it. And that's fine. All my pictures came off the wall. I could go on and on. My baby blanket was sent to me through my son, which is disgusting in itself. But what it comes back down to, and what I've always noticed, and we'll get into the mother thing more in the mother episode, but my mother, mine at least, seemingly was afraid of her husband. Whatever he wanted was how it was going to go. And he had control over everything. And even when she witnessed abuse, even when she witnessed mistreatment of me, because it happened right in front of her numerous times, she would literally turn away so she could say she didn't see it. She would literally turn away. And like in my book, Choking on Shame, I mean, for me, even the publisher was like, she's always washing dishes. I'm like, that's all she ever freaking did. Nothing was important. I could be going through like traumatic life stuff. I could be being beaten 3 feet away. She would just look out the window with that stone face, washing the damn, because that plate needed to be cleaned for 10 freaking minutes. And you want to talk about not feeling important and not being seen and
absolutely.
heard, and then getting silent treatment because I made him upset. Wow. It's a lot. It's a
It is
lot.
a
And
lot.
for people who want to say, there are people, because there was physical abuse, but there's people who have said, well, if there's not physical abuse, if they did, well, let me tell you what, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, that stuff affects
Never
the
goes away.
child more. Yes, has longer term effects.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I had some terrible the physical abuse. I have met people who have endured much worse, but mine wasn't nice at times. But it doesn't even affect me. Like, it sounds crazy, but I don't even care that they beat the crap out of me and strangled me and did this and that and whatever. But the words, they almost were like on a replay through my mind. So as much as I knew they were wrong, and as
Yep.
much as I left that house the second I could and was like, nobody else is ever going to do this again, gosh, it's somewhere underneath everything in the core of your being.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so hard to heal from it, because it's so far under the surface, under even our lack of awareness,
Right.
that you really have to have the right person who gets it, that can get down to that core. It's like, I always say, it's like digging up a rose bush. If anyone's a gardener, if you've ever had a rose bush and tried to dig it up, you always think, okay, like how much I'm down 3-4 feet in the ground. This mother trucker's got to stop at some point. No, you keep going. You think maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. It keeps going and going deeper down, and the thorns get thicker and they stab you and you bleed. That's what healing is like. It's awful. It's
Yes.
awful, but you
Yes.
got to do it. You got to do it to get to a sense of peace.
Yes. Let me ask you, because I'm curious. One of the things that I learned the hard way was whenever my sperm donor, whenever he was mad about something, no matter what, I would get the silent treatment, like a toddler,
Yes.
crossing their arms, and I'm not talking to you. And like they could be in the room with, say, our egg donor, my mother, and he would be like, tell Victoria that she needs to, go turn the light off. And I'm like, I'm right here, and it's like, your father should turn the light off. I heard him. I'm 3 feet away, but he's not speaking to you. And it would kill me inside. Like it was like, what did I do? And I remember like he would flirt with my friends. And if they were like, I'm not going anywhere with him, he's freaks
Yes.
me out, he scares me. He would come to me and say, you're wasting my time because I redid my day to be here for your friend who needed something, and now they don't want to be alone with me in their car and whatever. And I don't have time for this, and you ruined my day. And I would go and apologize because my friend didn't feel safe to be in a car alone with him because she knew he was going to be flirty and disrespectful. And I would be the one to apologize, and then I would get silent treatment. And it's like, what, to me, the silent treatment is horrible because he would just like walk by you and not speak to you. Did you go through that too?
I didn't even get the courtesy of him telling my mother or acknowledging me at all. I would get a minimum a few days, if I was lucky, for any sense of disapproval, up to 3 months at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes all the way into adulthood, because
Yes.
I think people think that when you grow up and you're 18 and you can leave the house, that it ends, and it doesn't end. It just changes a little bit. Like, he
Yes.
would be stupid. He never put his hands on me after I was 18. But yeah, the silent treatment, I always tell people to remember this, because that probably mucked me up more than anything. Silent treatment is a military hostage war tactic. They used it on war criminals in Guantanamo Bay.
Yes.
This is not what you do to your child, your wife, your whoever. My
Right.
mother did it to me. My stepfather did it to me. Then I went off and married a covert narcissist, because it was a narcissist that hit me a little differently. So I didn't know. And guess who else gave me silent treatment? Him. And what did I do now, Victoria? I am married to the most wonderful, gentlest, loving man, but God help me, he is a quiet type, and I don't do well with the quiet. It has been a challenge for me. I almost did not engage with him because he is so quiet by nature. But I'm glad because we have a beautiful relationship, but quiet doesn't work for me.
Right.
You always have to have like the TV or a radio or some background noise. Yeah. Like, I can't even go to sleep. I cannot settle, because if it's quiet, I feel like nervous, like something's going to happen. Somebody's, upset with me. It's hard to quiet that after all that time.
It is. Do you remember the moment when you were like, wow, our father is a real piece of shit? Like, do you remember that moment and
Yeah.
the reason why? Okay, I'm going to tell you mine and you're probably going to laugh.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
and I was older and I like literally was in like no contact. So there was no contact. And my father was an afforded See, I can't talk. He was an authoritative figure, supposedly.
Okay.
Very authoritative figure. And I had heard that he was sick. So I was supposed to be doing a meeting. I was international director of my company, and I literally like said, I gotta go. I hear my dad is sick. We're no contact, but I heard he was really sick. So I leave and I go to, I know his doctor, he's had the same one forever. And I'm in the lobby and he comes out, a few minutes later and, just looks at me and he looks fine. And I'm like, and I said, I thought you were sick. And he goes, what are you doing here? And I said, I thought you were really sick and I wanted to make sure you're okay. I said, I left my job because you're an idiot. And I was like, so I just got up, went back to work and said it wasn't as bad as I thought, blah, 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 begged for forgiveness. And that was what I thought was the end of it. Well, apparently he was given a direct order and disregarded it. And so he was given another direct order and he disregarded that. So he ended up being reassigned to another area and that didn't work for him. So he was, if you want, quote unquote, called to office. And when he went in, they basically were going to give him an option. So he went to the doctor, unbelievable. And he went to the doctor and told them that he had sinusitis and his doctor's his friend. So his doctor, amazingly enough, writes him out on short-term disability for 6 weeks and 1 day until, guess what? That's when his retirement would have been. So he can't be let go. And then he gets his full retirement. So I didn't know that part of the story, but then I'm hearing through the grapevine that I had him fired. And I was like, what? And this was my what the hell moment. Well, I think, Dana, that was the first time I was ever like, it's time to bring this to accountability and I'm going to prove that I'm innocent. I was younger. This was well over 25 plus years ago. And I was an instructor in the same department. So I had people tell me things. And so in order for you to get off on the floor he worked on, there were cameras everywhere. There was a sign-in sheet at the desk and there are cameras all over the floor. And then you had to sign in to see who he was, his boss was. So I'm hearing that I got him fired. So I go to my dad, if you will, and I was like, do you really believe I got you fired? And he said, yes. And I said, well, then we have a little trip to take because I want to go and I want to see footage of me getting off the elevator. I want to see the sign-in sheet where I signed the document that I'm on the floor. And then I want to see where, one, I had a meeting, and two, where I wrote a letter. Because if I wrote a letter, it's going to be in my personnel file and it's also going to be in your personnel file. And I want to see the letter that I supposedly wrote. And if it's in my writing and I signed it, then they should let me see it, right? So he pitched a fit. And I'm like, no, I'm not letting this go. I'm going to make it until I know that I didn't do this because I didn't do this. And it wasn't like, oh, you stole a cookie. I didn't steal a cookie. And there's cookie on my face. I'm so sick of you slamming me for everything because I didn't do it. So finally, he whispers in my ear. I said, why would I do that? Like, I can't believe of all the things you've done to me in my life that you would accuse me of having you fired. Like, are you really?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm ready to go to your boss and sit down with him and say, if I'm being accused of this, then bring it to my face and show me. Like, prove me wrong. And he finally took me to the side and said, I found out it wasn't you. And I just looked at him. I said, okay, and that was it. I was like, you found out this wasn't me, and he was like, what are you waiting on, an apology? You're going to be waiting forever. And I was like, but I didn't do it. And he wouldn't acknowledge that he put it on me because he's the one who kept disobeying direct orders.
I know, but that's narcissism 101. Nothing is ever their fault. That's why they blame everybody else. Just like everything they know they're guilty of, they project on other people. They steal something, they say you're the thief. It's always their ego literally cannot withstand the offense or even entertain the possibility that they are accountable for any of their actions. Even if they do something that they know is wrong, they could beat the crap out of you and it's going to be your fault.
Right.
It is your
We
fault.
fell into their
Or
fist.
yes, or my favorite is when you get the narcissist that does apologize and says,
They
I'm
do?
sorry, but, oh yeah, I've
I've
had a
never
few
had that.
experiences, but it's always an, I'm sorry, but you da 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 da. So it's like,
Never got that
okay,
one.
so, but it's not a real apology if you're saying, but you blah, 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 blah. So you're sorry. You're not really sorry, obviously, but you're and it's always in a text message because that way they can say, look, see, I said I was sorry.
Right?
But the rest of it, but you da 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 da, it's still my fault. So you're
Mhm.
not really sorry. You're still not taking accountability. But again, it's all appearances.
Right.
Oh,
What was
they're
your
they're
moment?
they're species. My moment, actually, again, in the book, it's one of the earlier chapters. It was the first time I met him, my stepfather.
You
Before
were like
obviously,
7.
no, I was like 3, 4 years old when I first met him. My mother did not tell me where we were going. She led me down the stairs of our crappy little apartment, walked me across this busy street in Chicago, and there was this, I don't know, what was it, like a little Pinto or some god awful little nasty looking car back in the 70s, little hatchback, tiniest thing you could ever see. We get in the car, she sits me on her lap, and there's this man. I have no idea who the hell this man is, but okay. So we're in the car, I'm on her lap, and he hands me, like, he has like this stuffed dog puppet on his hand, and he's, making me laugh with it and using funny voices. And I'm just looking at him because back then we had stranger danger and we all knew better and all that. But my mom says it's okay. I could have the puppet. Okay. So I take it. But then I look at him and I threw it back at him. I did not want that stupid puppet because even though he was putting on this, little like, oh, look at me and we're having fun and I like your little kid act, there was something weird about it. So we proceed to go on. My mother apologizes that I throw this puppet back at him and I wanted no part of it. We proceed to drive along. The window was cracked. Back then, people smoked in their cars.
Right.
I have a lung issue and I feel like I had it back then too, but I was coughing and wanted fresh air. And we were at a stop sign and, I'm a kid, like the stoplights, how you'd sit there and wait for it and count the seconds for it to change
Yeah.
from red to, green or whatever. So the window was down a little bit. Here's me as a little kid folding my little hands over the window and like, I was trying to doubly breathe and also kind of see, like stick my little face sideways as much as I could out the window. Well, he didn't like that my fingers were on the glass. Get your fingers off the glass. And I wasn't listening. I didn't care. I was in my own little world. Get your
Yeah.
fingers off. Then he's telling my mother, tell her to get her fingers off. Well, I didn't move. So he proceeded to roll the window up. And mind you, back then, how you had to like actually
Manually.
like roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he reached across and like under our legs and manually, and I started screaming when my fingers started crunching
Yeah.
between the glass and the frame. My mother did nothing. He didn't stop. Then he finally did stop because she was like, I don't want to say his name, but she called him by his name and said, oh, you should probably stop now. She very weak effort for her to, help me out there. So he finally relented. He let it sit for a minute so I could hurt and cry a little bit. Then they got rolled down, the window got rolled down a little bit. And I remember my little red fingers and I just clutched them close to me and I cried on my mother. And my mother never was like, are you okay? Or that's wrong or anything. Proceeded to, I guess, I didn't know what it was when I was a kid, but looking back, I was apparently going on a date with them. It was time for me to meet him, I guess. But that is when I was done with him. He proceeded to bring a puppet, a different puppet, to every date I was dragged on after that. And every damn one of them I threw back at him. I did not want any part of him. I saw behind his crap. He typical luring me with the smiles and the funny voice and look at me bringing you a gift and then abusing me. Literally the first time I met him. The first time I met him. And needless to say, there's a whole book. So it just went downhill from there. They got married. I got bigger. I got sassier. I started fighting back. But unfortunately, they brought out some big guns too, and stuff that I would have never imagined anyone would do to their child, but stuff that really happened. It's horrifying. So it's sad. It's sad that people are okay with themselves. And like I said, I don't understand how they sleep at night, but
I don't either.
these kind of people, you know, I've even heard that there's like an idea, there are actually groups of people who think they're like aliens or demons, or, you know, there's all kinds of ideas. But at the end of the day, these are human beings that do not have remorse or regret. They are literally incapable. So anybody that says, "Oh, I'm a diagnosed narcissist, I call BS on you. I'm in therapy for," no, you're not. No narcissist would go to therapy
That's
unless there
right.
was something, some way for them to get a benefit out of
But
it,
they're
but they
doing the
would,
therapist.
right. Yeah, usually, or trying to make you look like the crazy person. I've been there a few times. So yeah, it's really sad that there are people like that. But I want to, you know, kind of conclude by saying this is that there's a lot of people that hold shame about how they feel about their, whether it's their father, their mother, whoever, this toxic person. I get a lot of people that say, well, my father just died or my mother just died. I don't want to go to the funeral, but the family's, you know, making me feel like I'm a piece of crap if I'm giving you permission, if you're listening to this and that resonates. It's okay. It's okay. You know what? Unfortunately, just because you're biologically related to somebody, I'll even go so far. You might have multiple children. And I met a woman once. She was something, 90 some years old, but she had 9 children that she birthed, and she said she only liked one of them. And I mean, that's a horrible thing to say, but you know what? That's reality. Just because you are biologically related to somebody does not mean that there is an innate necessity to like them. If you
Right.
don't want to participate in any kind of relationship or contact with a parent, a sibling, a friend, whoever, you don't have to. If somebody dies and you want to go and pay your last respects, go. You want to go and say F you at their grave, that is your option. I am just saying, give yourself permission and do not let anyone else corner you into feeling a certain way, shaming you, guilting you. You are entitled to your feelings. You know your truth.
Right.
Do not let people who do not want to accept the truth make you operate under their perspectives. You're
Right.
entitled to your opinion and your feelings, and I am validating you for you. So go with that.
There
And
are so many people who do
uh,
want you around, and the people that don't, that's what just kills me is so many people give excuses to these arrogant pricks. They're like, oh, well, they had a horrible childhood. Well, so did I, but I'm not Jeffrey Dahmer. You know,
exactly.
I'm not going around and eating people for lunch. It's like I chose not to follow in their footsteps. I tell people I thank them because they taught me how I didn't want to end up. If they
Exactly.
had kept me around them, I'd have been just like them. So I thank them. I do. And people are like, what? Because I broke the cycle. I refuse. Faith will come in here and tell you my mom has never screamed at me. She's never yelled at me. She's never popped me, spanked me, nothing. And that kid, when she had a nurse that was just way off the charts, I told her, I said, you have a voice, you need to use it. She goes, but mom, I want to cuss her out. And you taught me better than that. So I'm not going to say anything. And I was like, for a moment, I was like, oh, I'm so proud of you. But in another moment, I was like, dadgummit, just tell her to get out. It's like but the thing is, you have the choice to break the cycle. You
Yes.
do not give them the power to emulate their behavior because they don't have that much power. I refuse to let them have that kind of power anymore. It's like when I've done speaking engagements, I come out with like one of those dollar store hearts that you can put stuff in. And I said, okay, we have one heart. Let's fill it up. So I'll fill it up and say we can fill it up with happiness and laughter and love and gratitude and kindness. Or we can fill it with hatred and animosity and narcissism. And which one do you want to carry in your life? Life is too short. And you're giving them more power because in their eyes, they've turned you into a specimen of themselves. And that's what they want. Misery loves company. Don't give it to them. You know, the best revenge is served cold. The best revenge is success. And they do not want to see us succeed. That is the bottom line. They absolutely don't want to see the best for us.
No, a narcissist doesn't want anything that they have not decided should be. And I agree with what you just said. In my book, I said that I couldn't be anything because I wasn't supposed to be anything. I had to be the nothing that they
Mhm.
decided I was going to be. Even
Right.
now, I have one published book and two more are coming in the next 4 or 5 months. I am so proud of myself
You
for
should be.
where I came from to now. They can't acknowledge that.
Mhm.
I have not had one word about, obviously they don't like them though. I've heard through family, but that's the thing. I wasn't supposed to be anything. And so they are still out there smearing my name as if they know anything or have any information, even spreading rumors about mental health diagnoses that I don't have just because it makes that, yeah, like who would dispute that? So I let them, like you say, there's no point. You're wasting your breath, you're wasting your time. And my feeling about the people who believe their crap is that those people wanted to believe those things about you. Those weren't your people. And
Right.
believe me, I have mourned the loss of multiple sides of family because people believe that I've had 4 narcissists smear my name. And so that's a lot. You want to talk about
Yes.
feeling alone and orphaned and that's been something to get through. But guess what? I'm still standing. There are still people like you, Victoria, who are in my life that you have no obligation to care about me at all. But
But
we
I,
have found each other. But you do. And I love you just as much. But we all have those people, even when we don't think we do. There are all people that are sitting there wanting to get, they do care about you. They love you and they don't have to. And those are your people.
yes.
Your people are not necessarily your mother, your father, your brothers and sisters, and a lot of family. They're just who you decide they are. But you, to go along with what you said, you have the choice. If you want to give people the power to determine who you are and what you can be, that is your choice. I choose not to, you chose not to, and thank God we're the better off for it.
Yep. Well, I thank you again for being here. And our next episode, we're going to talk about our egg donor, how scrambled they can be,
I love it.
how they can be so poached. We have to end on a laugh,
Yes, we do.
So I thank everybody for listening, and I hope you will tune in for the next episode. Again, I am always so honored to have Dana with us. I love her to madness. Please go get Gasping for Air. It should be on everybody's bookshelf nightstand. It is amazing. Seriously, it's one of my top favorite books of all time, and I mean that wholeheartedly.
Well, I appreciate that, but don't forget about your first book, Who Kicked First, because I mean, there are a lot of horrific true stories out there, but ma'am, I don't know how you're still standing, literally and figuratively. And if people don't know your story, they need to go out and buy your book, Who Kicked First, because you are literally a warrior of all warriors. So thank you for having me. Thank you for having this podcast and for bringing so many of us together. And until next time.
Yes. Thanks, everybody.